Welcome to the Transcend Money community. My name is Tony, and in today's video we're going to look at the price of Bitcoin. We're going to see how oil is doing because we already knew that we were going to have a rise. I'm going long, not because I'm an expert in oil, but I'm getting tempted and I might give it a try today. I'll tell you where I think it's a good point to enter. Well, obviously we have to talk about the situation in the Middle East and the fact that we have a war with Iran and attacks on all the countries of the immigrants. Basically, I think Oman hasn't had any problems, some bombing also in Cyprus. In total, the situation right now is more important, I think, regarding everything we've discussed. It's that Iran has finally said it's going to close the Strait of Hormuz. And now the question is that China has said Iran has to open the strait because, as you know, I don't know, 50 or 80% of China's oil comes from the Strait of Hormuz. And China has basically told Iran that no, it has to open the passage of Hormuz, at least for China. And then Iran has said yes, it will let Chinese ships pass, but only Chinese ships, the others it will bomb. So oil is going to go up. Most of the oil is going to go up because I think 20% of the world's oil is moved. And most of it goes to India and China is the most important. If the numbers I've read are correct, it's impressive that 50% of China's oil comes from the Strait of Hormuz. So, point number one, we're seeing that oil has gone up, effectively. Here it was on Monday, boom, it went up. In fact, on Sunday at 6 p.m. in New York, that's where we have the rise. And well, basically, those who went long on oil, some of you told me you went long. 15% isn't bad. In 2 days, in less than 48 hours. Well, so how's Bitcoin doing? Bitcoin is flat. Basically, it had a small rise, a historic moment yesterday. Spectacular rise, it went to touch support. It took me out of my short. Then I'll explain where it took me out, which is basically where I entered and where I got out. And the only thing I wanted to do quickly was to think a bit about what we're discussing. Obviously, oil right now seems to be the biggest opportunity, but we know that any news can change everything radically. For now, it seems like, yes, there's going to be an oil-gas situation. Let's think a bit about what's happening with this strait. Because if you look, this strait is needed by Dubai, which can enter through here. That's where the ships are now. But it seems like it's more expensive to enter through this area. So, Oman isn't affected, but the immigrants are Kuwait, Qatar, Bahrain, and probably Saudi Arabia too, of course. The question now is, and I think it can have an impact in this area, not just because it has mountains. In total, what I was thinking is that maybe it's not just about oil, because this area is very important. For tankers, for oil tankers, but also for naval ships. I don't know to what extent the food issue can be a problem, or how prices for supplies can rise for all these countries. And not just for these oil-producing countries. That's the economic point we're discussing. Also the water supply. I don't know to what extent it can be problematic. In case they have pipes bringing water. I don't know where they get it from. Cairo, Turkey, or wherever. It could be a military target for Iran. So we're talking about water, food, and oil, which can be an explosive combination for these countries. Because, as I understand, most of the countries in the Emirates get 60% of their drinking water from the sea. So if that situation occurs, they could lose 40%, which could be critical. In total, we have Chinese ships. What can happen? The Russians probably too. And then there's another interesting situation, which I'm mentioning for the macroeconomy. In Ukraine, basically, it seems like it's one of the most important oil pipelines for Europe. And it seems like Europe is saying they need the pipeline. They need to buy gas and oil from Russia because this is going to have a big impact. Because it's also going to affect Europe through the Suez Canal. I mean, through the Strait of Hormuz, oil and gas won't be able to flow from that area. So the whole energy issue can be extremely surprising. What can happen with prices if the war spreads? Also, I think it's quite extraordinary, and I don't know how to react, that Chinese ships can enter and leave. What I don't quite understand is how the reaction will be to Chinese ships moving around here. It can be anything, food, water, oil products, from Chinese factories, but Europeans can't enter. Europeans can't enter. All the Asian and African countries that only let Chinese ships pass. Basically, they're putting up a border that only lets Chinese ships pass. So, that could have a positive impact on China's economy, I think. In total, the geopolitical situation is spectacular. We have right now, let's go with the price of Bitcoin and the price of oil, which is what's interesting. Let's go first with the price of Bitcoin. And the price of Bitcoin, what we have right now. You know this is DeltaStrike, for those who want to see it. This is the DeltaStrike website. If you're trading with a link from the Transcend Money community, you'll have free access if you reach a certain trading volume, right? Well, so now let's get to it, because the book is hot. Today, look at this, that's why. The days before the war, the book was so strange. Today we see it's normal, and we're going to see the entry points today, okay? So, I haven't forgotten to explain what happened yesterday. Yesterday we were here, and I said it was overbought and that we should sell. So, there's strong money in the market. There's strong money in the market. Okay, let's go. Where are the points today? The points are clearly at 72 to 71. So, in my opinion, we have this important resistance zone around 68. But it seems like today there's no resistance. Or at least for now, there's no resistance. So it can try to reach the top of the channel. That's why I've set 71 to 72. And those, 71, 72, will be my new longs. I'm going to put it at 71, 72. Let me check my capital for a moment. 600. 72, obviously yes. And the 71. Okay, so for me 71, 72. Shorts. 71, I'm going to go short. And I'm also going to go in at 71, 8, 8. Another short. There, I have my entries. There are my entries to go short in case of a rise. Will it reach 71.72? We don't know. Does it need to buy $0.5 billion or $0.6 billion? It seems like an entry at 65, so today, the entry I had at 61, I'm moving it up to 65. It seems fine to me, 65, 3 which would be this whole spike. Actually, I'm going to put it a bit lower, 65, 99. In these two spikes, where I had an entry on February 12th. Okay, so there, I have it, the range to go short here. To go long here, some other point to enter. Long, it's all filled. It's all filled, there's a lot of money waiting to go long on Bitcoin. Look, the zone is around 65. There we have it. 65, there's a lot of money. In fact, quite a bit. Let me organize this. 1, 2, 3 for prices. With more than 200 and more than 500 Bitcoins. So, there, I'm going with 65. Yes, there's an entry. And then 55. 55 is the next one. I already have it at 55. So, for me right now, those are the entry points. 70 to 71. Which is basically impressive. The order book is touching the top and then the 65. The top that made this resistance and the top of the range and the 65 and below the 55. I'll leave 55. I think so. Okay, perfect. So now, the question is, well, we already have this, right? Well, now the question is oil. Oil, you know I like it. 2 exchange houses, I'm making the transition. But for now, I'm still with Mexi. The cheapest commissions in the market, 100 tokens without commission. The funding rate is starting to rise. Bullish. Bitcoin is going up. I'm not entering at this point because it's neutral in the hourly, for hour, and daily charts. So for me, the risk-benefit ratio doesn't look good right now. I don't like it in this zone. I mean, being a bit higher, maybe I'll lower it from 71 to 70. But for now, 71 to 72, which is the top of this range. Why? Because I think it's likely that we'll look for these zones with high probability. This zone, or if not this one, or if not that one, okay? For now, the one I see bouncing back is this one, 65. Once I'm in, I know how to protect the entry. Okay, that's a story, right? So, the other one is oil. This is what I was thinking. For oil, if I go here, oil, and we go, for example, to USD oil. I'm also in futures now. US oil, which has had a 15% rise in 2 days. So, the question is, I would enter at this point at 72.09. Ideally, 71. I don't have much experience with this, but 71.03, I will put it in. 71.03, I'll put in a long entry of 1,100 with 10x leverage. I'll leave it in this position, in case it retests this zone. So, the only risk I have here is if the geopolitical situation changes. But it seems that for now, I don't think that will happen. Of course, here each one has to assume their own risks, right? Okay, perfect. And then, I think we can wrap up today's video here. You have all the links below in the video description. If you want, Mexi or Binance. There, you have the links. And by the way, on Binance, they do it with tokens, which has surprised me quite a bit. I mean, there are many tokens of RWA that are from Solana. And for example, of course, gold obviously. They do have it with USDT. But it seems that it's with Ethereum, anyway the oil. There are 2 oil options on Binance. For those of you on Binance, you can give me your feedback. There's Hitting Oil, Oil Brent and Oil, WTI and Oil Brent. They do it multiplied by 100 it seems. Interesting, to make it easier to trade, I suppose. But in reality, you have to divide it by 100. For example, oil WTI, which would be 74.76 is 74.77. Okay. Very well. So we'll leave today's video here. Good luck to everyone with your positions. Health, love, and fortune, and we'll see you in the next video.